like, they actually are dressed like fairly similarly.
Parallels.
You with the clothes in this episode.
But like, it's important.
I think I'm just mad because when we talked about Faith a few weeks ago, I missed a clothing thing that I was really important.
So now you're overly perceptive of clothing.
I think that might be part of it, yeah. My name is KJ, and you're listening to the Supernatural Opinions podcast, where some things in this world are supernatural. My pronouns are she, they, and this is the podcast where I talk to my fellow Supernatural fans about Supernatural, and we share our Supernatural opinions. Today we're recapping Season 1, Episode 14, Nightmare, which originally aired on February 6, 2006, and here to help me do that are my guests of the week. We have Meredith.
Hello, my pronouns are she and her, and I just finished my midterms.
Yay! We love that for you. And Jordan.
Hi, my name is Jordan. My pronouns are she and her, and my TikTok is at PsychicChick21.
You also have a podcast. I feel like we don't mention that when you're here.
Oh, yeah.
You do?
I do. I just haven't worked on it in a while. Yeah.
Wait.
It's at Fandemonia Podcast. You can find me on Spotify and Apple and all the good places where podcasts live.
I literally put in my notes to remind you to promote it.
I need to make a new episode.
And Julia.
Hello, I'm Julia. My pronouns are she and her, and I just accidentally screamed in the entire hallway of my dorm.
We love that. You almost weren't with us this week, so we are super glad that you're here.
As am I.
This week's episode will contain spoilers for this episode and may reference previous episodes, but will not contain spoilers for later episodes of Supernatural. Additional content warning on this one for child abuse and depiction/discussion of suicide. This one has some adult topics. This week's episode is titled Nightmare, and that's a reference to Sam's weird precognitive dreams and growing psychic abilities, because they're present.
And Max's life, honestly.
Yeah, it's rough. But this week's episode was written by Rael Tucker and future showrunner Sarah Gamble and directed by Phil Segrisha. So we just talked about Sarah and Rael a couple episodes back. They wrote together on Faith and Dead in the Water, so we've seen them before. Obviously, they are both here for the long haul. And this is our first episode directed by Phil Segrisha, but getting used to him. This man has directed 45 episodes of Supernatural, and almost all of them are absolute cream of the crop episodes, both the Season 8 and Season 14 season finales, which are my two favorite finales. Wayward Sisters, Night Shifter, Yellow Fever, Fan Fiction, My Heart Will Go On, some absolute bangers that we can look forward to.
Oh, damn. Good job, Phil.
Phil Segrisha is, high on the list. Eric Kripke and Robert Singer really like Phil Segrisha. But let's get on to the recap. We have a very classic opening scene. There's a man coming home, putting his car in the garage, barely. The actor is Cameron McDonald. He's one of those Vancouver actors who's in a lot of things. Probably his most notable appearance and why I vaguely recognized his face was a 3-episode arc as Mr. Svensson on Riverdale.
Riverdale.
One of the few CW shows that I find more off the wall than this one.
Never change.
His car and radio turn back on, filling the garage and the car with exhaust/carbon monoxide. He really does his best to survive. He's like blocking the vents, but carbon monoxide poisoning is no joke, and this guy dies. Sam wakes up from a dream about this, and we need to talk about how Dean is sleeping. Because Dean is like sleeping on his back, but about like as close to the edge as is like really comfortable. Like if he was any more close to the edge, he'd be falling off with like one arm like dangling off the bed, palm up.
Oh, I know what you're gonna say.
People sleep in all kinds of weird ways. I know I do, but like I'm just gonna declare this. It is not natural for someone who hunts monsters to sleep with their arm out over the middle of the air like that. And you know what is natural about it? It's within grabbing distance of his baby brother.
Aww.
That's very cute.
I've seen this a bunch of times, so I obviously did not come up with this on my own, but like I am so on board of this train of thought of Dean started sleeping like this when they were kids, so Sam could like touch his arm and like know that Dean was like still there.
Aww.
Oh,
And Dean could also, like, check on Sam without, like, either of them really moving, and that's literally what happens in this scene. Sam wakes up from a nightmare, he turns on the light, and then, like, tugs on Dean's hand like he's a little kid.
It's so cute.
It's adorable.
But also, if they do get attacked, it means he can grab Sam really quickly.
Yes, that too. And it's really, like, a full, like, a brother connection thing happening here with this sleeping position. Sam is really insistent that they have to go right now, and I'm probably reading way too much into this, but Sam and Dean are both wearing just t-shirts in this scene, and for once this is not about how beautiful they are, I swear. Sam's shirt is white and Dean's is black, and then we pan over to the lamp and one of the bulbs is burned out and the other one's on, so one's white, one's black. That fades into one of Baby's headlights being out, and I don't know if this means something, but we just saw 3 different, like, pairs of things where one was light and one was dark.
I do that
You
all
are
the time
so
in my own
observant.
writing, so I'm gonna make something out of this. It means something.
I didn't intend to, but this episode is very clothing heavy. I talked about the clothes so much in my notes on this one. I don't know what was happening the day I wrote these.
It's like, and coming down the runway, we have Dean in a lovely flannel.
Sam has called ahead to check on the license plate number of the car that he saw in his dream, and Dean insists that it was probably just a nightmare, but Sam said that it felt real, like his dreams about Jess pre-pilot and his dreams about their house and home. So Dean points out that if Sam doesn't know this guy, why would he have a premonition about him? And Sam gets an address for the man. His name is Jim Miller, and he lives in Saginaw, Michigan. But when they arrive there, Sam's nightmare premonition has already come to pass, and Mr. Miller has been found deceased from a suspected suicide.
Well, that ain't good.
Yeah, that's not great. One of the neighbors says he always seemed very normal, and you never really know what's going on behind closed doors, which is more true than this lady knows, as we're gonna find out by the end of this episode. She also tells them that happened about an hour or two ago, which was after Sam's dream, but before they could have possibly gotten there, because they obviously left and drove all the way there. He's really confused about why you would have a premonition if you couldn't get there in time to do anything about it. Dean wants some answers from Sam that Sam does not have about his premonitions, because how is he supposed to know how they work? They did not come with an instruction manual.
You know what, I think something is very interesting about, like, pretty much every show or myth or just stories in general that has, like, premonitions of the future. Like, every time you get a prophecy, you're like, how can I stop this from happening? And I just think it's interesting because, like, people always try to affect the future, but sometimes maybe you just need to know what's going on and you don't need to prevent it.
I think that this might be one of those cases, if I'm honest.
Yeah, like a fixed point in time.
It's very Doctor Who of you.
Cue the priest outfits. This is what I've been wanting since episode 4 when we said that Sam should have been a priest. They looked so good in them.
It's so ironic. Like, these men have murdered many, many, many people and creatures, and there they are in the preachers, and they just look so naturally good in the preachers' outfits. Like,
I mean, some preachers have done some pretty shady stuff too.
Exactly.
You know what? That's very true.
See current events.
I don't have a lot of experience with priests, to be honest.
Neither do I.
Not in my
Be glad.
wheelhouse at all. But they look really good in these outfits. And I understand that might be sacrilegious. I was just watching the Eric Kripke commentary on the season 4 finale, and he was talking about how some of the crew was very uncomfortable with some of the stuff that happened to nuns in that episode.
Seriously?
And like
I guess.
But they're nuns.
Apparently he had to be talked like way down on some of the stuff that he wanted to do. He directed that episode.
Like religion and other people's cultures, not in this case, but like, when is Kripke ever going to do something comfortable?
No, seriously.
That is true. Anyway, now I have to cut all of that.
Spoilers.
Yeah, the priest outfits look really good. Sam's really like scandalized that they're pretending to be preachers or priests or whatever, but Dean's like really leaning into it.
Which is so on brand for both of them.
Yeah, because Sam is not super religious, but definitely like has some like religious
Belief system.
beliefs. Yeah, he's definitely some sort of spiritual type person.
Also, I think he has like a higher measure of respect for this kind of a job than Dean does.
Just, yeah people in general.
And what's so, like, for me, what's so fun watching episodes like that, because they lean into that dynamic a lot, especially during the early seasons. But, like, that's the one thing that I like watching a lot between them, because that's exactly how my sister and I are. It's hilarious. Like, because we both grew up in a very religious household. And while we're both religious, I'm just kind of like, man, whatever. Like, there's things that I think are superficial and don't matter, whereas she's very much, like, the traditional, like, and so it's so funny, because we would also get in small spats like that that all the time.
Jim's wife seems to be more than happy to see them, but Jim's brother is not big on God, not super excited. Although it's not really about you, Jim's brother, whose name I don't remember. I'm sure it's in my notes later.
Yeah, shut up.
Mrs. Miller says that Jim had no history of depression and that their son Max found him in like the garage. And Sam goes to talk to Max on his own and introduces himself as Sam, which was interesting. And then Dean asks Mrs. Miller about her home, but she reports that there's no issues that indicate anything haunted or anything like that. And Max lies a bunch, says that his dad was a really normal dad and he's just living at home trying to save up to go to school.
Which is Dean coded as heck.
Yeah, I agree.
Although
there are a lot of parallels between like him and Sam in this episode, but like that was one moment I was like, that's Dean coded.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
Although Sam has some really interesting takes on their dad at the end of this episode that feel a lot like this. Max says he wasn't sure why Jim did it, and Sam says he understands how hard it is to lose a parent, especially when you don't have all the answers. And it's kind of like he's talking about his mom, but it really feels more like he's specifically talking about John at this point, because John is gone with no explanation.
So on brand for John.
That's entirely on him.
I think that the more that this develops, the more it feels like Mary's death was intentional. Like, you know, they don't have answers for why it happened, but they know that somebody has an answer for why it happened, whereas John just is gone. But Dean has something with like a laser pointers and a screen. I can't name this device, but it's cool. It's like some sort of ghost hunting equipment.
It looks
honestly
flashy.
He probably called it that.
Laser pointer thingy.
This is my timey-wimey detector. It goes bing when there's stuff.
He finds nothing, so it's not really important. In the next scene, I think we find out that it's an infrared thermal scanner. I'm not sure what that looks like, but okay. The important thing is he doesn't find anything. Back at the new motel, because it's not the same motel that they were at before, it's a different motel. Dean's wearing 2 to 3 shirts, and Sam is wearing 1 blue-gray long-sleeve shirt.
And might I add, he looks fabulous.
Sam looks slightly sweaty, though. He's wearing like one long sleeve layer, but he looks a little bit sweaty. And Dean is wearing 3 layers and looks not sweaty. I'm not sure what was going on with Jared. Or if the lights were just hot or whatever, but he looked sweaty. Sam says that nothing bad has happened in or near the Miller's home since it was built, which is usually a good indicator that it's not going to be haunted.
Which means something else is at play.
Sam gets a really bad headache, and it takes Dean about 10 seconds too long to get up and attend to him. I'm like, are you gonna get up and check on him or no?
Where's the older brother instinct? It's just gone.
Why are you just frozen there? Sam then has his first ever awake premonition about Jim's brother Roger. His name is Roger. He's unpacking some groceries only to die via decapitation by self-opening and closing window.
Yeah, that was pleasant to watch.
Might be one of my favorite deaths so far in the show, like in this first season thus far.
He really lost his head.
Dean really does not want Sam to throw up on baby's upholstery.
I mean, mood.
Not at all relevant, but the seats in Baby are almost 100% vinyl. People in fanfiction often refer to them as leather, and my very limited understanding of cars is that would be difficult to clean every time a Winchester bled in a car, which is a pretty common occurrence.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man.
So they're probably vinyl seats.
The amount of times that poor baby gets beat up in this show.
Sam is scared. Now he has some questions about his premonitions, and Dean's the one with no answers, because Dean also does not have an instruction manual on how premonitions work. The premonitions are now very confusing, not only isolated to things important to the Winchesters, but something to do with the Miller family, and as an added bonus, they hurt now. They didn't hurt before because he was asleep, but now that he's having them when he's awake, the premonitions hurt.
Well, that sucks. But hey, he's got it easy. In a lot of stories, the people who have visions get seizures.
I mean, this looks honestly not too far off, if I'm being honest. I feel like they just needed to give Jared something to do for these premonitions.
Instead of just standing there like Raven.
Instead of jolting out of bed, you need to now be able to have them at convenient times, aside from when they're sleeping.
Man, I wish they watched Disney Channel, because I need them to make some That's So Raven jokes.
When was That's So Raven on?
I don't know.
2000s, early 2000s.
Yeah, it was early 2000s.
Maybe they were on at the same time.
They might have
I never really watched it, so...
That's So Raven.
They
Okay,
probably
That's
would
So
have been.
Raven ended in 2007 and it started in 2003, so they should have been making That's So Raven jokes.
Why don't you watch the Disney Channel, boys?
I feel like it was just the actors. Like, I think it's Sarah Gamble is the reason that Dean's a Trekkie.
All right, we can thank her for that, because Star Trek is great.
But, like, yeah, so I feel like the writers just weren't watching Disney. Is the thing that happened there.
That makes sense.
I feel like they were, but they intentionally
That's
decided
fair.
not to reference it because it would be
Maybe.
too unmasculine or whatever.
That could be. I mean, Gene was watching Veronica Mars, which was happening during the first 2 to 3 seasons of this show, which he then later references, so.
There's tons of other psychic stuff they could reference, like,
Yeah, that too.
The Dead Zone, Carrie, Christine.
We just